Witty, thought-provoking, and uplifting, Southern Soul Livestream is a program that you'll invite your friends over to watch every week, where you'll learn about interesting guests and get to share in their fascinating experiences. Tune in each Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern to connect with guests from across the generations and to laugh with our eclectic hosts who are as charming as they are talented. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's our host, Calvin.
Awesome. Thank you, KD, for getting us started. Dorian, we've been planning this conversation for a while, and I'm just so excited because I remember back in the day where KD was referring to, it's like when things got started. And then it's just so awesome that, when I ran into you at the Duke event where you were on stage, and, I remember you were speaking, and I was like, wait a minute. How when people go from being, in the beginning where they're new and maybe green, but now all of a sudden, they got a different wisdom in their eye, right? You on that stage and you were speaking. I was like, wait a minute, that brother didn't experience a few things. You know what I mean? So it's that moment I'm like, I got to take Katie's advice and get you on the show. So thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, man, definitely a pleasure being here with you both. You're right about it, man. It's school of hard knocks when you get over that decade. So yeah, it was definitely a different lens of looking through life.
Awesome. Well, let me do this. I'm just going to read. I typically don't read bios, but I think this is a good bio backdrop just to kind of read, because one of the things we're doing in Southern Soul is we have a national audience. And, we know you got a strong following in Georgia, Atlanta, and North Carolina, but we want to make sure that the whole planet, especially the United States, know about the awesome work you're doing. So let me share your background. Let me read this. Dorian Bolden is the CEO and Chief Vision Officer for Beyu Group, which owns and operates several cafes and coffee shops, a locally roasted e-commerce business of retail coffees and prepared meals and catering division through its commercial kitchen hub. In 2005, Dorian left a successful career on Wall Street, returning to Durham, North Carolina, to launch Beyu Caffé, making the restaurant a place that fosters culture and community. Through his vision of serving others through food, live music, and community discussions, Dorian has collaborated with dozens of local and national organizations to help create community initiatives that have had lasting impact. After successfully opening and operating Beyu Caffé, in the immediate aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, Dorian decided to take on real estate development and transition to property ownership in 2016 by undertaking a $1.4 million development project to relocate their flagship location due to rising costs in downtown Durham. From receiving the Distinguished Service Award by Duke University's Samuel Du Bois Cook Society to gracing the cover of Durham magazine, Dorian is recognized as a community champion. Durham is an alumnus of Duke University, where he met his wife, Dr. Tanisha Bolden. They have 2 children and a family dog, Banner. Welcome, Southern Soul, to Dorian Bolden. Dorian, how you doing, my brother?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thursday towards the end of the week. Yeah, man, just enjoying the journey.
Well, let's get started with your origin story, right? We'd like to kind of get started with like where you come from, right? So tell us, I understand that you started out in Atlanta, right? Tell us, how you got started. Were you always in the, retail restaurant business? What's your origin story here? Where'd you grow up and how'd you end up in Durham? Tell us that, how you got started.
Yeah. So I'm a Georgia boy, from Decatur, Georgia, right outside Atlanta. So, growing up in Atlanta in the 80s, wanted to find came across a school I wanted to go to outside of Georgia. And so mentor of mine, took me up 85 North, discovered Duke University, and fell in love with the campus. And going from kind of an all Black environment to a predominantly white university was definitely a little bit of a culture shock. And I think that's where, majoring in sociology, study society, class, race, gender, and then also an economics major, business, supply and demand. It really shaped the business social part of who I am. But graduated from Duke, went into New York, jumped right into finance, and kind of watching the movie, Wall Street growing up, and wanted to be that Gordon Gekko of just chasing money. But experienced a kind of a heartbreak of a life-changing event with my father passing in 2005. And our company was also going through a merger at the same time, and so those two events kind of shook me up, with my dad passing, and then also seeing people who were close to me, mentors of mine, lose their job, given a severance package and exited out. And so those two things kind of formulated that I wanted to, be in charge of my own future, but at the same time, realizing tomorrow's not guaranteed. So I, left the world of finance, followed, this pretty girl I met in college. Now my wife, she was in North Carolina, attended medical school, she didn't quite get into the NYU as her first choice. And so it just worked out, followed her, and began coming up with this idea that was based off a cool coffee shop concept in Atlanta called Cafe Intermezzo's. Anybody from the A knows that Intermezzo's been around for over 45 years now. And, when I went into Intermezzo's, for me, the origin of Beyu was walking in there in the evenings, and you just saw like this beautiful 16th century, like European cafe, but it was nothing but brothers and sisters from Spelman, Morehouse, Clark, Atlanta, Georgia State, brothers coming from Tech, Georgia Tech. I mean, it was just brothers and sisters at night. That's where everybody went, and it was affordable for me to take a date. So I used to take all my dates there. And that was the thing, seeing Blackness in such beauty in this cafe style environment was the inspiration, the origin of what I wanted to create, a place where you could just be you, and Beyu Caffé.
Awesome. I love it. Katie is going crazy because she loves Beyu Caffé. Being down in Atlanta, man, it's something about that evening night scene, but you call it, right? It's beautiful, it's black, it's excellent, it's everything. I didn't realize they had been around for so long, but yeah, I could imagine that, because I remember spending some time in Raleigh, Durham. When I first got there, it was a college town, but it was kind of a sleepy city, It was I called it an event city. If somebody had physically planned an event, there was something going on, but not Atlanta. Atlanta was like always something going on. So I love how you kind of really took that idea and that concept to Raleigh, Durham, because I can only imagine like how beautiful it was when the people received it, right? So tell me this, I'm kind of curious, right? Because so much has changed. I'm curious, do you still consider yourself like an entrepreneur today? Like after everything you've done, you're 2 kids in, you've done so much. Do you still consider yourself an entrepreneur, or are you kind of like a different person now?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, definitely I still consider myself an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, you're always having to dream and come up with the next big thing, and that grind is still there. But it is, I'll say, a more mature and seasoned entrepreneur, kind of what you mentioned earlier about kind of seeing me on the stage. I've had to learn how to go from mom and pop to CEO of a company. And that transition, when you go from just, under 10, 15, employees to where you get up to over 75 team members, it's just a different shift. You're not going to know everybody. You have to rely on other people. And so you really move from just being entrepreneur, where it can be me going after a dream, to where I'm running a company, I'm running a business, and really more, again, running a company. And that's a different shift sometimes, but that entrepreneurial vibe, that entrepreneurial hunger is innate. It's just in me. Yeah, you can't, you always have to refuel that, because that's what has kept me going, to try to find the next thing.
I love how you describe that, because, it's the right thing to do, right? Entrepreneur is almost like, you're scrappy, you're in these streets, you're hustling, I call it legal hustling, right? You hustle, but you're following the rules, right? But, it's like, but then, there's family and there's responsibility. So I imagine if you've gone through like you said, I like the way you describe it, from a few employees to actual team members, right? That transition. And I can only imagine what it has taken for you. Tell me about this. Let's get into the social emotional side. Tell us about some of your greatest fears or accomplishment as an entrepreneur, as you took that journey, right? I can only imagine, right? Because I identify as an entrepreneur, that it could have been scary at times. Tell us about some of your experiences. Any big moments, that you really look back on or think about on occasion?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes I feel like they become so many, you kind of forget them, all of them, the different milestones that I've gone through. But in the very beginning, I've always went with a quote that was like, decide that you want it more than you're afraid of it. And, I think the first thing was just really writing a business plan. Like, it took me forever to kind of write a business plan. It took me over a year. And, my philosophy was always about getting it right the first time. I think it's so easy for entrepreneurs to say what they want to try to rush through. But, the goal was always trying to get everything exact on paper. But I think for me, the first fear was being able to overcome, realizing you're not going to know everything. You can't know everything. You just have to step out there. And that's the level of faith. And so for me, I still remember that moment of, came across a customer while I was working at a coffee shop in North Carolina, working my business plan. And we just got to talking, and it just was like, had these mustard seeds around his neck. And it was just a reminder, faith is tiny as a mustard seed. And so for me, that was kind of that understanding that I just had to overcome my fear and just step out there. Other ones was trying to raise capital. It's so easy just wanting to give up. We were about 85 to 90% debt financed. And of course, happening in 2008 when the housing crisis, one of the financial crises happened. So being told no over and over and over again, it's disheartening. And I even remember looking to go back into finance when I moved down to North Carolina. I started working at a company and was about to go back to my old roots of just, finding clients and becoming a financial advisor. And the second day, it just hit me again. Like, I saw where I was going to end up, that it just wasn't the path for me. And, bowed out graciously saying, hey, look, I'm sorry, this just isn't meant for me. I'm, supposed to go someplace else. And so I remember having overcome that hump of trying to find investors. And, they call it the power of the power of momentum, that, once you get that one investor, then the momentum happens, you get the second and you get the third, and then it becomes easier. And so being able to overcome raising capital was the hurdle, going through construction and development of working with architects and trying to build this thing. I didn't know jack about construction designs, plumbing, mechanical, engineering drawings, like electrical drawings, any of that stuff. So having to figure all that stuff out and learn. Yeah, there's so many stories, man. We could probably spend the whole session talking about it. But what I will tell you though, the one advice that I got from a mentor of mine was, anything you want to learn, you can find in a book. And so often I tell entrepreneurs is that, make sure you're reading up on what you don't know. And if you don't know, find advisors, find people who can, provide insight, provide some guidance on what you need to learn. As they always say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And that's so applicable in life. So yeah, seeking that knowledge.
Thank you for sharing that. I can tell it's quite heartfelt. When I saw you on that stage that day, I was like, oh, because in my mind I was like, I can be a bit cynical. I'm like, man, brothers are gonna get brand new, they gonna get successful, and I was like, nah, man, he's still himself. He's still that genuine person. So I was really proud, man. So thanks for sharing those moments, because those are real nuggets. Those are real jewels, right, that you just blessed the audience with. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to talk about fundraising and venture capital, but first I want to get to this thing that is one of my favorite things, because here at Southern Soul, we are a community-centric brand, right? I've used different terms to describe us. Podcast is such an old term because it really doesn't accurately describe what we do. Right. More recently, I said, what? We're an online learning community. And what we've learned is we have so many people nationally who show up every Thursday night. And we've actually nicknamed them the unicorns. They're out there, they're doing their thing, they're hustling. They have followed career and money, and they discovered that they're all by themselves. They don't have people who look like them that they can have an intellectual conversation. They even in big cities like New Jersey, right? So we have people popping in from New Jersey, from Oklahoma, from Idaho, because they're like, man, I just want to connect with my people. Because, as you can imagine, every place ain't like Atlanta, right? You don't have such rich culture. But I say to say, that's kind of how we show up, right, for that community-centric thing. And for many people, it's like homecoming. I think you understand community because it's said in your bio how you described it, right? You described the music, you described the community, the discussion, the conversation. So tell me this. This is the question. Some would say you created a community-centric brand. I say that. But what are your thoughts, right? Do you think, it's important, it's not important? Why did you choose community, right? Was it something in you? Like, because, other people, they can be focused on the dollars first. I'm just kind of curious at why you, a person who you are, just decided to take that community-centric brand. And even if you consider it that, you may consider it something different now.
Yeah. Man, that's a good question, a deep question too. When I think about, what makes, every entrepreneur is different in terms of what drives them. And I think if I look at my upbringing and my experience, I've, raised in the church, my high school, Towers High School, marching band, like it was an all Black high school that just had that community, which is different. It's no different than how people talk about the HBCU experience versus sometimes the PWI experience. And so seeing both sides, I got that all Black experience in my high school, not necessarily in college, but that community is also rooted in me. And, and it's the irony of me being an only child. I think it's also wanted to create a place that, I felt like I could be around people that I enjoy. And so I've always wanted to create an environment that I enjoy the people that I work with. I enjoy the customers and who come in, who are our guests. To the point where, if the wrong customer, we have one of our core values, just be you. Unless you're an asshole, then be you someplace else. And that applies for that applies for customers and our staff. And so, it's always finding those core values that I think attracts the right people. But, community has been difficult because community and being profitable, having a business mindset aren't always they're not always synonymous. And so it's very hard to try to bridge the two, because it is easy to get lost in I won't even say a capitalistic mindset, because I do, of course I'm a fan of capitalism, just how I look at business. But the lens of capitalism is that money is a byproduct of the service you provide. And I think, COVID was a great example of that, of serving the community during COVID by, finding people that we can, deliver meals to, whether it was frontline responders or kids who were on free and reduced lunch, teachers and others, and people who were food insecure. Our ability was being able to serve, and as a byproduct, the money comes. And I think as long as you remember that community is a byproduct of what you're doing in terms of serving, the money will come. And and I've had my mistakes too. I've gotten lost in that same egocentric kind of money first, and got lost and had to reset one or two times along the way. So by no means perfect, but yeah, learned now how to reset and understand what should be at the core.
I love that response, Dorian, and I tell you why is because, I do some coaching over at the business school, and it's one of the things we often kind of joke about these business plans, right? And I was working with this one team, and they actually are interested in a green venture, right? Composting, things like that. And they're so in love, right, with the idea. And as you know, green initiatives can be hard, right? But the problem is that it hit me, and we went through a few iterations of this, and I finally hit them. I said, I think I understand the challenge I have with your business approach or plan. They said, what's that? I said, I think you guys have done a very successful job solving the environmental problem, but you have yet to solve the business problem. And the reason why you guys are in this MBA program is that you're trying to solve business problem, also known as financial, also known as capitalism, also known as how do we stay in business, right? But I like the way you describe it, because community is one thing, but it doesn't always make money. Now I was listening and reading on the internet, and you said this joke that I just love, right? You had to make a decision. Uh-oh, you already know what it is, too.
I don't even know. I told you, I just speak freely, so I ain't no telling what the hell I said, but yeah, go for it.
Exactly, right. And I picked that, but you were just really talking about that decision where, you guys started with live music, right? Or that was a part of your recipe at one point in time, but you had to make a decision, right? And the community didn't like it much, right? So I'm just wondering personally, like, how did that feel? I mean, was it a hard decision? Was it, because I remember when I started podcasts, I'm like, Calvin, you're getting ready to go back on the public eye. You're going to have all kinds of people saying stuff. You talk too fast, you talk too little, you talk too much. It's hard being in a public eye. I'm just wondering, when you made that decision, did the backlash kind of startle you? I mean, what was your take on it?
Yeah, that you asked earlier about like what are the memorable moments of things that I had to overcome. That would by far be one of the top three. The backlash that I received when we discontinued live music, that was devastating. I'm not gonna lie. That was, you think about, you pour your heart and your soul into providing community events, love for the community. And I think how quickly it just turned. And I think we see it every day nowadays in the digital media world. It's so easy for people to comment. It made it all seem a bit superficial. And so it kind of didn't make the community, what I believed in community, what I envisioned, what I felt that we had given to the community didn't necessarily feel the same, receiving it back. And so, I was talking to one of our customers, and Dare, we were just chatting out back one day, and he helped me realize too, the anger was also a byproduct of something we did really well. Like, people were upset because we did it so well. And, when I go back and talk about how, I saw that look of Cafe and the Mezzos and that beauty of Black people in that space, we had provided something that was community. And I recognized taking that away was challenging, and was devastating to our community. So yeah, all in all, when I say regrets, that is one of my regrets is pulling away the music so quickly. I think anybody who says they don't have regrets, and good for them, but I'm like, yeah, I definitely have enough regrets, things that, life lessons that I would do differently, what I know now. It was still the right decision, especially when I look at where we are now, but I probably would have scaled it back a little bit more slowly. But, again, it's one of those things too, that it thickened my skin. I went through a time where, I think I became a little cold as a business owner. And I think that's one thing entrepreneurs have to really be careful. I mean, you see it in the news all the time, right? Tyler Perry went into it, Oprah goes, all those big, sell out, or you're not Black enough, or whatever. I mean, I got it all, and so I think it helped me grow stronger, but also made me realize how to approach things through both a lens of not just rationalizing the decision, making sure it hits the heart, and watching the intuition of, what feels right, going with your gut. If you can get those three things aligned, you're good. And so I think with this one, it wasn't quite thought out in terms of how I, quickly took it away. But yeah, it definitely was still the right decision. And we're successful. We're more successful now because of that tough, very difficult decision.
Well, kudos to you. Thank you for sharing that moment, because, once again, as I put on that business land, I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I can see that was a hard decision. I can see, and I just start strategy, how business guys do, we just kind of do this scenario thinking. We're like, I bet this happened. But I like the way you describe it, right? It's hard. We got to a better place. However, I could have done it differently, but it was still the right thing to do, right? Kudos to you, right? Because, as they say, these things make us stronger, right? So thank you for sharing that.
If I can say too, I always think back, I keep a quote around me, by Jimmy Iovine, who compares it to the racehorses and how they have those blinders on. Mm-hmm. And, he uses different colorful language, but he says, I don't care about the person on the right. I don't care about the other person on the left. I have to keep my blinders on and stay focused. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's very easy to get dragged into what others think, but that's always going to be the true testament of an entrepreneur. And that's why I say that intuition and that heart is so important, where you got to really kind of have that silver star following your gut. Because if in your gut, you feel like that's the right decision, you know where you got to go, and you can rationalize it because you've done the knowledge and the research, and that's in line. And then your heart is in the right place, and you can sleep like a baby at night. Hell, go. No worry about what anybody else says.
Oh man, I love it. You remind me, I was talking to a therapist once, and he told me, he's like, don't trust that intuition. I'm like, man, come on, you fired. I ain't never went.
Right.
Well, understand, that's the good Lord talking. Don't tell me not to trust my intuition. Yeah, man, I fired that buddy.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But it's about intuition. Nobody else gets it, right? But you get it, right? So kudos to you. Let's talk about fundraising and venture capital. I had Brooke Daniels on here a few months ago. She was a classmate, but she's really getting into these funding circles and these people of color who are building venture capital and things. And she really helped me understand that venture capital ain't for the faint at heart. It ain't for everybody, right? It may sound good, but I was like, whoa. She's like, yeah, if you get into venture capital, you may as well be expecting your business to grow, or they're going to expect you to do a 6X or 20X type growth. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't even be thinking venture capital. I initially like, yeah, I ain't thinking venture capital. My question is, you went from, like you said, debt financing, you're growing, you're being successful, then you get into venture capital, right? Has that been an easy transition for you? Do you feel more comfortable because maybe you're closer to that finance space? How has your world changed since you stepped into that venture capital world? Because initially I was thinking venture capital for apps and technology, but I could never imagine it for a coffee shop. But some kind of way you're doing it, and that's just my opinion. It's not anything researched. But I say this to say you're doing it. Did it change your world? Did it give you any different stress? I mean,
yeah, in a way, because we did it 2020. So started looking at the potential of raising capital in 2019. And again, when you start looking at venture capital and raising money, you need to start looking. I mean, if you're lucky, best case scenario, 6 months, but you probably get more like a year and a half, because it's about relationships and and being able to show that you have a vision and being able to put the numbers together. And again, like I said before, you get told no plenty of times. And so for us, post COVID happening, we had several investors lined up, but a lot of things kind of fell apart with COVID. And luckily, we were able to bring in the core of investors that we were looking at. But that was a unique experience for me. There are plenty of studies to talk about the inequities, the racial inequalities of venture capital and between Black founders and Black entrepreneurs to white entrepreneurs. And I'll never forget an instance where our lead investor, Resilient Ventures, they're a great venture fund that specializes in Black, brown women startups, in addition to not just in tech. And we were in a meeting where me and another company were pitching to investors. And at the end of it, there was one, and again, mostly just all white men, with the exception of one white female. And at the end of the meeting, I remember one guy was trying to tell the other company that they should take less. And the managing member of our investor, our venture fund, was like, "Why should they take less?" Like, I've been in these meetings all the time with white investors or white, founders, and you easily fund them. And these are two great businesses here. And it was at that moment it hit me, where no different than we hear on the news with police officers, shooting innocent Black people because they look threatening. It's the same thing with Black faces in the boardroom. Sadly, you're going to look and appear not as smart. 2 + 2 at PWI is 2 + 2 at HBCU is 2 + 2 at Durham Tech is 2 + 2 coming out of prison. It doesn't matter where you come from. Knowledge is knowledge. Nobody has a monopoly on it. But when you go into these boardrooms, so often they see a Black face and it's like, oh, well, you're not as smart, or you don't talk the way and polish as everyone else. And I was naive, right? I had a Duke degree, finance background, been in business for over 10 years. I'm like, well, surely I'm better than these startups that you coming in here, white, Black, whoever. Nah. And that was kind of eye-opening for me to see things differently. And so there's a little bit of a game to raising venture capital, where you really do have to have a remarkable product, something that's going to yell, scream, that's going to be able to, multiply and scale, like you said, 20x quickly. And so you have to just have a different mindset of how do you want to see your business growing? Because again, this isn't a startup type business. You need to grow a company and something that can really scale. And so that's team members, that's sales, that's marketing. It's just a different mindset. And if you're interested in that, then venture capital can be a way forward. Otherwise, you may want to just look at angel investors. And that's what we did. We found one venture investor and then a lot of angel investors, accredited investors who could put in anywhere from 20, 25,000 and just go that route as well. So yeah, that was our story, how we did it. And if we decide to scale more, then we'll revisit that and do another series round.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing us wisdom on that. I'm getting to the end of the question, so I just got two things. I'm going to combine them to one, and then I'm going to give Katie to ask a few questions, because she always loved to have the last question, by the way. But just think about next steps for you. I mean, you definitely have already enough that you can write a few books on your experiences, right? But I know a man that thinks he's often thinking about his legacy. What's next? So I guess my question for you is, what's next, right? As a father, as a husband, when you think about your legacy, I mean, do you want your children, to be encouraged to be entrepreneurs? Do you want something different for them? Based on the success you've seen, the pains, ups and downs, what's next for Dorian? What's next for your family? What's next for Beyu Coffee Cafe, and it's not even fair to call you guys coffee because you guys are so much. You're an enterprise now, so I apologize for that. So what's next for you guys?
So looking at how we've been able to kind of reshape ourselves during COVID, where we now have a commissary hub where we bake our pastries in house. We're able to produce a lot of our own food. We're going to be launching our coffee on Amazon in the next couple of months. And, we're selling our coffee, our brand that people love Beyu. So we have our coffee at other locations that we're starting to put our coffee into. And so when I think about entrepreneurship and just growth, for us, it's trying to find smarter ways of really looking at the coffee side of our business, of pushing our coffee wholesale, of course, looking at opening additional retail stores. So we're opening 2 locations at RDU International Airport, which we're hoping to look at by February. One in Terminal 1, one in Terminal 2, both of them former Starbucks. And so being able to go into the airport has been just a huge blessing and a dream of mine for, like 5 years. And that is a long, long process. And so when I think about legacy, right, for me is also how do we look at, bringing somebody in either after me or if it's my kids, because I'm not necessarily want to say, hey, they have to come into the business and run it. I really want them to enjoy whatever it is that they love doing, and be able to earn a great living at it. There are plenty of people who are not meant to be entrepreneurs. Like everyone doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. Some people it's like, hey, go out there, make that money and be an investor for an entrepreneur who has that hunger. And I think so often we miss out and we forget about, we need the investors. And so, yeah, I would say for them is earn a great living and do something you love. And that's the other crazy part about me is I guess I am a workaholic because I love what I do. So it doesn't seem like work. And if you can find the balance in all of it, for me is being able to take my kids to Jamaica for the first time, a couple of years ago. And that was a dream of mine to be able to take them to Jamaica. That was my first time out of the country after my dad died in 2005. So yeah, it's really about finding balance, I think, as an entrepreneur, and just seeing where Beyu can go.
I love it. I love it. More of being you is what I just heard. Be you is what he wished. What I think I love, Katie, is that we will now be able to support Beyu Caffé even though we're down here in Atlanta, because they're going to be on Amazon. They're going to be everywhere. They probably got products now that we don't know about. So, Dorian, make sure you keep us in the loop of all of the things you guys, because you guys started, in one place. Now you guys are enterprise. You're all over the place, man. Thank you for being here.
And one thing I will too, I forgot to tell you is that we are looking to help. How do we help build other entrepreneurs? And so as we think about growing our retail stores, it's also about franchising, and that's a really big one for us. And so because we looked at this model, either end of 2023 or 2024, we're in talks now to create kind of that upward pathway and that mobility, so you don't have to go through what I had to go through of trying to figure it out. But if you have the talent, the skill set, the work ethic, hey, here's a blueprint to how you can create a profitable model and be your own business owner. And so, we're coming up with some creative ways to help brothers and sisters to do it in a way that even can come out either debt-free, but can really talk about building wealth and upward mobility in our community.
OMG, Katie, I love franchises. I love franchise model. And I know that I've been telling you that there's this other coffee shop out there who are franchising, and the young, gifted, and Black are buying it left and right. We won't talk about them, but I'm telling you, I love that. I love it. So, Dorian, thank you for being you. Go ahead, Katie. Go ahead and close us out. We're actually 5 minutes over, which is okay, but I want to let Dorian get back to his life, so he can be you. Be himself. Go ahead.
I've been enjoying it. This has been dope.
Close us out.
Sure. Dorian, I got one quick question. I will tell you, Durham is my favorite place that I have ever lived. And I am curious if you can share with those of us that are here, why Durham was the right place for you to open up the kind of business that you did. When we talk about community, when we consider the kind of environment we want, I think all of us, when we create a business, we think about where we want to do it. So tell me what in particular it was about Durham that made it the right place for your concept.
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So, it's funny when I think about my upbringing, going from all Black high school to predominantly all white university. that kind of shaped my mindset. And when I was in New York is when I saw it was less about Black and white, but more about African American, Dominican, Irish, Catholic, Italian. Like, it was more about the ethnicity of it all. And I wanted to try to find a way to bring people together. And Durham in North Carolina was just perfect when you look at the history and the legacy of Black Wall Street. It was going through an amazing growth period back in 2009 when we opened. But even before that, you could see the growth happening. It reminded me of Atlanta a decade or two earlier. And what I love most was then you had HBCU with North Carolina Central University on one side, you had Duke University on the other side. You had a Black mayor at the time with Mayor Bill Bell, and you had this huge pocket of this community activists and people who were very involved. But you also had the business community, you had people who were coming in that wanted to create the kind of this startup sort of feel. So you had just a lot of pockets, and it was just authentic. That reminded me of Atlanta. And so while other people in the triangle tend to look at Durham as the ugly stepchild, Durham and everyone from Durham loved Durham. And it's like it was this kind of this grit that you had being from Durham, that you knew it was so unique and popular. And so it was just a perfect fit for us as home base, as our flagship for Beyu Caffé. So four retail locations later, and soon 6 by early next year, man, this is still home.
It is. That's fantastic to hear. And I will tell you that you have outdone Cafe Intermezzo. I remember back in the day when you're talking about it, and you upped the game. You truly did, Dorian. Congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Dorian, don't Katie be too nice.
Those big shoes right there, boy.
Yes, indeed. And
I'm serious.
Don't let Katie fool you. I just told her yesterday that you stopped doing the music. Boy, she got so mad. So
I didn't.
Nice today. She said, no, he didn't. I said, yes, he did, girl. Dorian got rid of the music. But Dorian, my brother, thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for continuing to believe in some of your core principle as community and supporting and being here. So, man, thank you for being you. I know it's hard, but I just wanted to let you know that we here at Southern Soul, we appreciate you, man. We see you. And even though we're not around, man, we're looking forward to supporting you when, you show up on Amazon, you show up in different places.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me and allowing me to share this message in the voice and hopefully help others. That's what it's about, learn one, teach one.
Awesome. Welcome, people, to Southern Soul. If it's your first time at Southern Soul, well, welcome. We've been grooving today. OMG, we had a unique lineup tonight. We started at 6:30 first time, but you got to try something different. We had Mr. Dorian Bolden out of Raleigh, Durham, dropping knowledge, consistent pearls of wisdom about what it means to evolve from a coffee shop on his journey to becoming a franchisee. Man, it's just like crazy exciting, because if you spent some time in Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, you had the opportunity to see this grow when it was like, oh, I know that dude from over there, and all of a sudden he's doing his thing. So it's so beautiful, y'all.
Thank you for joining us at Southern Soul Livestream Talk Show. Join us weekly at soullivestream.com. If you're joining us live, we'll take a quick music break and then come back for discussion with the audience.